Hello, citizens of the internet. It is I, your local queer xenocyte. Long time no see, it's been a while. For those who may care, in a very long story short way, my computer broke the day after uploading my last video. I think it was Jeffree Star himself, or Shane Dawson, or both of them. And basically I sunk $600 more than I needed because I don't know how to build a computer and I broke brand new parts. So that's that. But now I'm a little sick. I've gotten better and it is definitely not the pandemic that is going on at the moment. I did get a test a while back. There was a scare in my area. PSA, wear a mask. Socially distance when possible, don't go outside, don't get COVID, avoid the test. It's awful, my nose bled. It was a bad experience. So apologies in advance if I sound a little sick or I am sniffly every now and then. I am still a little sick. Also, if my eyes look bloodshot or tired, I have fucked up my sleeping pattern really bad, but I really want to do a video, so we're just gonna do it. And who cares? Yeah, woo! Team queers. Alright, so today's video might be considered old news in the eyes of the internet because anything more than a week old is basically ancient history. But it is something I care a lot about and I feel like wasn't spoken about a lot. Like, it was spoken about a fair bit if you're on Twitter, but I don't really see it touched on a lot on YouTube. And I have strong opinions about it, and I like to make videos that I care about and have strong opinions about because someone's got to listen, right? If you've already read the title, which, like, everybody does, I don't know why anyone says this, but here I am saying it. But if you've already read the title, this video is about JK Rowling because I can't get enough of her, and I just have really strong opinions on her and the bullshit that she says and does and has written about. So yeah, today we're going to talk about JK Rowling being a TERF. And I know that she doesn't agree with that opinion. In fact, she thinks that calling her a TERF is being a misogynist. But I'm saying it anyway because I'm a trans person and I think she's a TERF. And I have proof as to why. She has said a lot of things and we're going to talk about that today. So I know that my first ever video here on YouTube was already kind of about her scandal a couple months back in regards to her being a TERF and saying transphobic things. But that video was a bit less on that the topic as a whole and more so just about like a hashtag that was trending during it. And even then it was me reading tweets and making fun of them. But I want this video to be a deep dive on the tweets that she had made and the behaviors that she has shown and her being a TERF and going on this weird transphobic crusade, because I guess you've got to go after someone once you become a billionaire or millionaire, whatever the fuck she is. And she decided that trans people will be her victim. And honestly, I'm just glad that someone's recognizing my existence in the world. And honestly, there are more aspects to JK Rowling other than her transphobia that I could discuss about, and I may even talk about in other videos in regards to what she has written in Harry Potter and Pottermore and shit like that. But that, yeah, all of that will be for another video, or videos, I don't know. I just have a lot to say on her, you know? But today, it's gonna be just transphobia, her being a TERF, and that topic. Most specifically, the things that happened back in June, July. This video may be long because I don't know when to shut up, so I apologize in advance. But with all of this out of the way, let's just get into it. Let's start. Woo, yeah, team queers. Yeah. On June 6, 2020, JK Rowling comes out with a tweet that would later be one of many controversial tweets that comes out over the next few weeks. And what I would say was the tweet that started this whole scandal. The now deleted tweet reads,
"People who menstruate. I'm sure there used to be a word for those people. Someone help me out. Wumpin, Wimpun, Woomud. Opinion, creating a more equal post-COVID-19 world for people who menstruate."
With the release of this tweet, very quickly, voices, thoughts, and opinions of a variety of angles in regards to the debate about gender identity, biological sex, and transgender rights came out of the woodworks and into the Twitter sphere, and later on, mainstream media. The hashtag #IStandWithJK Rowling quickly became a trending tweet on Twitter, and for some, her tweet was seen as a validation of their inner transphobia and bigotry, a shining beacon of light that says it's okay to have problems with trans people for being trans. A signal, if you will, that validated their feelings that it was okay to hold opinions that may be detrimental to trans people because a famous influential author has tweeted something of similar vein of thought. For others, especially those who are trans and non-binary, saw her tweet as an attack, as a hurtful and hateful statement that would likely put us at risk of transphobes who felt validated and empowered by JK Rowling's tweets. The problem with this statement is that the idea that only women menstruate excludes trans women from the definition of what it means to be a woman and womanhood as a whole, defining womanhood by nothing more than the ability to conceive children and having that ability. It also sends out a message to trans men and non-binary people that we are still intrinsically women, regardless of how we identify. And that, in fact, how we identify does not matter because of our sexual organs. Because some of us have the ability to have children, because some of us menstruate. It also creates a really problematic narrative that a woman's main purpose is to conceive a child. She may disagree with this assessment, but if you're going to define womanhood by whether or not someone has ovaries and bleeds every month or two, then what about those women who had to get their ovaries removed? Or women who are going through menopause? Or some women who don't have periods due to medical health reasons? It is a very archaic and disgustingly traditional way of thinking that undermines decades of hard work from feminists. And look, I'm sure she only meant to invalidate the existence and identities of trans women and trans men and non-binary people. I'm sure her tweets were only meant to actively harm trans people, and once again, I don't think she would agree with my assessment of this. In fact, I feel like she would call me a misogynist for thinking this, but her tweets also actively harm cis women, especially cis women who may not menstruate due to reasons beyond their control, and therefore perpetuate a mentality or the idea that a woman's main purpose is to bear children. There is already a stigma towards women in society who may choose not to have children or even can't have children, and this tweet only adds to that stigma. Whether she likes to admit it or not, her tweet is not only transphobic by nature, but it's also kind of misogynistic. But of course, I digress. What did JK Rowling have to say for herself? Why did she decide that this was the hill she needed to die on? Why was she going on this grand turf crusade? On June the 10th, 2020, JK Rowling released a 3,600-word essay detailing her reasoning for going into the topic on gender identity and transgender issues. She also goes into detail about her fears regarding the new trans activism, as she likes to call it, which begs the question of why new trans activism and what are her fears about it? You know? The first few paragraphs details her first set of controversy regarding the transgender topic and gender identity issues, which I believe was about a year or two ago, where she had tweeted support for known TERFs Mayor Forstater and Magdalene Byrne. In these paragraphs, she also goes into detail about how she sorts out trans people, read books about gender identity, and really trying to educate herself on the topic of gender identity and gender issues. She goes on in this essay about how she faced copious amounts of hate online, but also, to her surprise, an avalanche of love and support. Actually, at one point, she also talks about the term TERF, about how it's problematic and such, but she goes on to define what TERF means for those who are reading the essay and may have never actually come across the acronym before. And honestly, like, if this doesn't show that she has bouts of transphobia in that mind of hers, I really don't know what will. In this definition, she literally just outright called trans women men, and even goes as far to say that TERFs aren't transphobic because they include trans men in their spaces. But the reason why these TERFs are including trans men in their spaces, as JK Rowling states, is because they were born women. And if that doesn't scream, I'm invalidating your identity, I don't know what does. If a trans man identifies as a man, why the fuck would you include him in women's spaces? Like, I'm trans mask, and I sure as fuck don't want to be considered, like, I don't want to be included in women's spaces. I'm not a woman, I'm not a girl, I'm not a female, whatever, like, simple as that. I don't want to be included in that. I don't want to be lumped in with women. Sure, like, I may have been born with ovaries, I used to menstruate, you know, that sort of shit, but like, I'm not a woman. Simple. And to think that they include people like me and people similar to me in spaces because, oh, you were born a woman, it just really highlights how much TERFs invalidate trans identities by outright misgendering trans women and also trans men. It also highlights that JK Rowling thinks that that's okay. She thinks that that's not transphobic. She thinks that TERFs including trans men in their spaces because they were born women, she thinks that that is an okay, good, understandable thing for people to do. And if that doesn't scream that JK Rowling has some, at the very least, let's give her the benefit of the doubt here, internalized transphobia, then I really don't know what does. Carrying on, because I feel like I was starting to go on a bit of a tangent there, JK Rowling talks about 5 core reasons as to why she has inserted herself into the discussion of gender identity and trans issues. Her first 3 reasons, they're pretty simple, pretty straightforward, easy to digest, well, easy to digest considering that they're a bit problematic. She has concerns regarding the legal definition of sex and gender and the effects that that has with various charities she owns and supports, and the impacts that they may have towards cis women. Hint, hint, none really, but she insists. Her second reasoning kind of confused me a little. She's concerned about safeguarding children. The only thing I could really come out of that is she's concerned about discussing gender in schools, I guess. I don't really know what she means by safeguarding children, unless she's referring to things that I will talk about a little later on this video. She could actually be talking about that. That actually makes more sense. Thirdly, she talks about how she cares about freedom of speech, which I cannot emphasize enough. It's just so stupid. Freedom of speech does not protect hate speech. She talks about how she believes like Donald Trump himself deserves freedom of speech. And like, for sure, I guess, but like freedom of speech does not mean that someone gets to sit there and use slurs and use hate speech. Freedom of speech literally just means you can protest or speak out against the government and you won't get arrested for it. That's what freedom of speech is. As I always say when I get into this argument, freedom of speech does not exempt you from consequences. Talking ill of trans people, queer people, black people, whatever the heck, you know, this goes into a broader discussion of marginalization and oppression in general, but actively partaking in marginalizing people like that does not exempt you from consequences for partaking in that. Just because you are allowed to say that, oh yeah, insert slur here, and you don't get arrested for that, it still doesn't mean that people have to listen to that. It still doesn't mean that publishers still have to publish you. They have just as much of a right to pull their support from you because they don't agree with what you're saying. And that's not, your rights aren't being infringed there. But I keep going off the rails a little bit. I'm sorry, I have ADHD, okay? Be patient. Please, thank you. Thank you. Anyway, her fourth and fifth core reasons are what really spark my interest, and she goes into heavy detail about. The previous core reasons really only have like a paragraph or two dedicated to them, but these ones, this is the main chunk of the essay. This is the highlight. This is what you read the essay for. It's for these two core reasons, and are the two core reasons that kind of make me want to gouge my eyes out. But we're going to discuss about them because that's what this video is about. Regardless of the pain and suffering I'm going through, you have to suffer with me. It's beautiful, really. Her fourth reasoning are, in her words, an explosion of young girls seeking transitioning, and even citing that many of them are on the autism spectrum. I don't really know how that's related, but she brings that in there, and I couldn't actually find much that cites that, so fuck, I don't know. To be exact, she stated there's been a 4,400% increase of young girls seeking transitioning treatment in the UK. And now, when I first heard that figure, my assumption was a 4,400 increase in like 1 year or something, and I'm like, whoa, fuck, that's a big number. That can't be true. Like, I feel like if that's the case, we would see a mass influx of like, you know, trans men. You know, we'd see half the population or something identify as trans men. And I thought that can't be true. So I did some Googling, trying to find this research study that she's citing that has this figure, and I did find something quite interesting. What I noticed in this essay is she's bringing up this statistic and making these citations and such, but she fails to like actually cite the study. And I mean, on one hand, I feel like maybe it was just a mistake, but at the same time, she's a fucking writer. I feel like it wasn't a mistake, and I feel like there's good reason why she did not want to actively cite the research, the study that she's referencing. You see, in the mentioned essay that she's talking about, the 4,400% increase, that study isn't it's not a 4,400% increase in a span of 1 year or something. That percentage is a result of 8 or 9 years of research into it. And I mean, that's still a big spike, a 4,400% increase. That's a big number in general, but there's definitely different feelings that you get. If you hear a 4,400% increase over the span of 8 or 9 years, you do kind of think, well, that's a big number, but it's not as urgent, or it's not as pressing. It certainly does not sound as alarming as a sort of ambiguous, uncertain time sphere where you are left to nothing more than your imagination as to where this big spike comes from. 4,400% in 8 or 9 years, yeah, that's a big number. That should probably be looked into. But a 4,400% increase in an ambiguous time frame. That could be 1 year. Fuck, it could be 1 month, 1 day, 10 years, 100 years. It's so broad, but people who would read that, who are frightened of trans people and not see the time frame and are left to their own imaginations and their own fears as to what that time frame could potentially be. They just see the figure and go, well, that's a big fucking number. There's something wrong here. You know, think of the children and all that fucking shit.
Oh, won't somebody please think of the children?
JK Rowling states in her essay that the rise in young girls seeking transitioning treatment or being referred to these clinics is due to the misogyny that's rampant in society and young girls' desires to escape womanhood, so to say. I mean, what a very quick way to invalidate trans men, but go off. However, a psychologist who works at the Portman Mental Health Clinic, Polly Carmichael, I hope I pronounced that right, Carmichael. Anyway, she cites that the rise in treatment and young people seeking transitioning is not due to rampant misogyny in society, although that is an important thing that does need to be tackled, but instead it's because of the rise in visibility about trans people over the years, especially in the last decade, rather than a trend. And I believe she is right. I mean, fuck, I think about trans visibility 10 years ago, which is around the time that this research started, 2009, 2010, and yeah, there's like fuck all visibility. You know, cartoons and the media was still using trans people as like the butts of a joke, you know, especially trans women. It is almost as if as we begin to raise awareness and provide safe spaces and accessible trans services for those who may be seeking that sort of treatment, more people may seek that treatment because it's safer to do so and it's more accessible. But just a little thought experiment, just a little, you know, what if game. You know me, we like to play sort of what if scenarios on this channel, you know, because maybe, just maybe, food for thought, JK. JK Rowling also cites a psychotherapist by the name of Marcus Evans, who states that children will kill themselves if not permitted to transition do not align substantially with any robust data or studies in this area, nor do they align with the cases I have encountered over decades as a psychotherapist. Now this is where things get serious, because I feel like this citation JK Rowling made was extremely reckless and in very poor taste. A US study that examined and collected study data from more than 120,000 youth from the years 2012 to 2013, from ages ranging from 11 to 19, saw that 50% of female to male youth reported to have attempted suicide at least once, following with non-binary people with 41.8%. Now, the study did conclude that there is no definite answer as to why trans people were more likely to contemplate or attempt suicide, but did state that it was most likely due to marginalization and discrimination due to their gender identities. My point is for Marcus Evans and to then JK cite this to rule out gender treatment or transitioning treatment for youth is not a factor in mental health crisis like that is extremely dangerous. It is in extreme poor taste, and it's extremely invalidating towards not only trans youth who may be wishing to seek medical treatment for transitioning, but it's also extremely invalidating for trans people who have spoken up and stated that if they did not receive transitioning treatments when they were teenagers, they would be dead right now. It is already extremely hard to access transitioning treatment as an adult, at least in my country. You see, in Australia, you can't actually change your gender marker on your birth certificate unless you have undergone hormone therapy and all of the required surgery to reflect your new gender, which, if you're non-binary and like, what the fuck does that look like? There's no set idea of what a non-binary person looks like. You're kind of fucked. But if you're a poor trans person who can't afford all of the surgery, like me, you're also kind of fucked. But even then, in the UK, I did a little bit of digging in regards to legal age to access hormonal or medical treatments and gender reassignment surgery. And under the NHS, only those who are 18 years and older and have been on hormone therapy for a year are allowed to undergo gender reassignment surgery, which I find interesting because JK Rowling is here making this big deal about thinking of the children.
Think of the children. Won't somebody please think of the children?
And make really painting this horror story that there are 14-year-olds at the moment undergoing gender reassignment surgery and hormone therapy and such. And I do know that puberty blockers are a thing. And I do know that there's still research being done about any long-term effects of puberty blockers. But at the same time, if we're really going to sit here and talk about long-term effects or really negative side effects of various hormone therapies, whether it's puberty blockers or testosterone or estrogen, amongst 16, 17-year-olds who are legally able to, in under special circumstances, undergo hormone therapy, why don't we talk about the birth control pill? Now, the birth control pill is something that is allowed to be prescribed to young girls, I believe as young as 13, 14. And birth control is a form of estrogen. Estrogen thickens blood. I am not allowed estrogen, whether I wanted it or not. I can't actually go on the pill because I am preconditioned to have a heart attack and stroke. Now, I'm not even going to cite a study here to show really bad side effects because I've seen it firsthand. My own sister had 5 blood clots in her lung. She has half a functioning lung now, and for the rest of her life has to live with that directly because of birth control. And I'm not sitting here saying that, yeah, puberty blockers doesn't do that, and yeah, all these hormone therapies don't do that. What I am saying is if JK Rowling has extreme concern in regards to the health and well-being of adolescent youth undergoing hormone therapy, whether it's puberty blockers, estrogen, or testosterone, she should also make a really fucking big deal towards the pill, which has actively time and time again shown really bad side effects, including fucking strokes in very young people who for the rest of their lives has to live with the consequences of being on the pill. And mind you, my sister wasn't preconditioned with strokes and heart condition and such. There weren't any concerns that this was a very real thing that could happen to her. She wasn't banned from estrogen. She was only banned from estrogen after the blood clots, at which point it's kind of too late. The damage is done. She's got a half-functioning lung, for crying out loud. My point is she's making this big deal about this, about hormone therapy. And we know her end game here is to make it even harder for trans people to access these sort of treatments. That is already really fucking hard for trans people to access this treatment. If you make it any fucking harder, all you are doing is just making the lives even harder for trans people. Stop making it harder for us, Joe. You do not even understand what it's like for us. Alright, I'm moving on away from this core because I can actually feel myself really getting off the rails here, and I'm actually getting legitimately kind of pissed. So I'm gonna move on to the next core that she talks about because we've only just tackled one core at the moment. So moving on, her final core reason becomes very, very personal for her. This is where things get extremely personal with JK. JK Rowling came forward as both a sexual assault survivor and a survivor of domestic violence. And before I even go on with this topic, I want to sit here and I want to say that by no means I want to invalidate her experiences or even remotely suggest some idea that she deserved what she went through because she's transphobic. No one at any point, no matter who they are, deserves to go through the fears that comes with sexual assault and domestic violence. And the fact that she does talk about her own experiences does have good in it. It does allow those who are going through that, it finds a voice for them to be able to talk about their experiences. And I am glad that she did find a voice to talk about that. What I do want to say is that being a survivor of sexual assault and domestic violence does not give you a get out of jail free card to then be transphobic and invalidate the experiences and identities of trans people across the world. Carrying on with this core, now that that disclaimer is out of the way, what I do want to say first of all is I do like that she does start this with acknowledging that trans women, are more likely to find themselves in these situations of sexual assault and domestic violence and abuse overall, especially trans women of color. I am glad that she does put that out there. She acknowledges that, she realizes that. In fact, she even says herself she's in solidarity with trans women who are in these situations. I do like that she does start out with that. I feel like credit is where credit is due. But, and of course, there is a but, I must immediately withdraw my credit for her there because she proceeds to completely slap that in the face 10 times over. She pretty much backtracks everything she has said, just steamrolls it, just goes, yep, you know what, I understand that trans women go through this and I am in solidarity with that, but I'm going to now proceed to wrap that up in a garbage bin, put that in the bin, because I don't think trans women deserve to enter safe spaces for women that are going through this. Yeah, no, she does literally just outright say that. I am not kidding, I'm not exaggerating there. She literally, in her words, pretty much just says that trans women are undeserving of safe spaces designed for women because it may make some cis girls feel uncomfortable. She literally says that. She literally says that we shouldn't just open our doors for any man who feels or believes is a woman. Literally, like, at that point, what the fuck, Joe? How can you sit there, acknowledge that trans women are more likely to be the victims of abuse here, and go, yeah, I understand that, I'm in solidarity with that, but also you can't access these shelters, you can't access these safe spaces because you might make some cis girls feel a bit uncomfortable. You might just be a man pretending to be a woman for all we know. Like, Joe, who gives you the right to decide whose gender identity is valid here? Like, literally, what does she want trans women to do? If she's not allowing trans women to access these safe spaces, where the fuck can they go if not safe spaces designed for women? You know what would be a radical standpoint, JK? Not this turfy, transphobic standpoint that she insists is a radical standpoint and is making her a victim here. A radical standpoint would be sitting there and going, you know what, trans women deserve to feel safe, so we should open our doors for them. That is a radical standpoint, because currently the status quo is that, yeah, trans women deserve to fucking die. That is the status quo at the moment. So don't think that, oh, this is such a radical, crazy standpoint that the world hates you for. Literally, there are people out there who advocate what you're going for and more. And it is that, my friends, that really cements that JK Rowling is in fact a TERF. She is, by definition, a TERF. She legitimately believes that trans women are nothing more than just a bunch of men trying to invade women's spaces. She literally believes that. She stated that in this 3,600 word essay of hers. She can't backtrack from this. She can't feign ignorance or pretend like she couldn't get her thoughts across into word properly. You're a fucking author. You are an author. Alright, I'm gonna move on. I need to stop derailing. Moving on to the third and final point. JK Rowling just won't stop. She just won't stop on Twitter. She just won't shut up. She just keeps trying to proclaim herself as this martyr and dying on this stupid hill of hers. In between tweets where she's rating drawings done by children for this new book of hers or something, I'm not even going to say the title because I don't believe she deserves recognition for her work at the moment. But in between those tweets, she just keeps punching lower and lower and digging herself a deeper and deeper hole. She needs to just stop, but she won't. She consistently expresses grave concern for those who do transition. The ultimate cherry on top on all of this, the ultimate biggest fuck you towards the trans community across the world, the worst thing that you could possibly say in regards to trans people and transitioning and the trans community as a whole is to perhaps compare or say that transitioning is the modern day conversion therapy. That, I would say, would probably be the biggest fuck you and the biggest holy shit, what the fuck, why the fuck are you saying that? And I would like to sit here and say that thankfully JK Rowling does not say that, but she does. She just outright compares transitioning to conversion therapy. Literally fucking conversion therapy. Yep, the very fucking thing that queer kids and trans youth are sent to by the hands of their horrific parents who decide that today's a really good day to traumatize their children for the rest of their lives. Real fucking galaxy brain moves there, Joe. Real proud of you. That is... whew, mwah, cherry on top. The ultimate sign of ignorance and fuck you. Holy fuck. It is the ultimate sign of ignorance and insensitivity and just blatant fuck you towards the community that you are already actively harming and damaging by your own words and tweets on the internet. It is just in extreme poor taste and so extremely dangerous for her to say these things that will actively harm the community that she's talking about. Especially the most vulnerable people in the community, the youth. The trans and queer youth of this community are the ones who will be hurt the most by these statements of hers. But here's the sad reality that we all must face. JK Rowling no longer cares who these words affect. She no longer cares about the most vulnerable in society, which are the youth, especially the queer and trans youth who once looked up to her as an inspiration. When we say that people would die from these words, Joe, we're not being dramatic. We are legitimately concerned for the well-being of queer and trans youth across the world by these words. Time and time again, it has proven that when people speak up and talk about their experiences of being queer and trans and saying that it's okay to be queer and trans, it has saved lives. The same could be same in reverse. Every time people speak up and marginalize and demonize this community, it actively damages and harms the lives of those within that community. Basically, in conclusion to all of this, Joe, just shut the fuck up, get off Twitter for a little while, and enjoy your money bath. You're a fucking millionaire. Why do you have to do this? Alright, so I'm going to wrap it up here. I feel like I've gone through a lot in regards to this topic. I'm actually feeling quite drained and exhausted from this because you can only do this so much before you just think, what point is there in giving some kind of benefit of the doubt? Thank you for watching. Please like, comment, subscribe. It'd make me really happy. Drop a comment if you want, you know, whether or not you agree with me, whether or not you disagree with me. Please check out my last video. I worked really hard on it and I'd really appreciate if there was just like, I don't know, 3 more views on it or something. I'll probably do more on JK Rowling, just less about her turfiness because that can get exhausting after a while. You can check me out on Twitter at Xenocide. But for now, wash your hands, wear a mask, socially distance, avoid getting COVID. Just try not to get the test. If you have to, obviously do it. I'm not advocating to don't take the test. I'm advocating practicing good measures so that you don't have to take the test because it sucks. But alright, we're out now. Stay safe. Yeah. Bye.